In the heart of Cedar Grove, where century-old Victorian homes line maple-shaded streets, Fire Captain James Morrison thought he was responding to just another house fire. For 28 years, he'd battled countless blazes, saved numerous lives, and earned every grey hair on his head. But this call was different. As flames consumed the historic Manning estate, he found 83-year-old Margaret Manning clutching a leather-bound letter like it was worth more than her own life. Through the smoke and chaos, her words would echo in his mind forever. They lied about everything. Outside, as paramedics tended to her, she pressed the letter into his ash-covered hands. "The truth must come out," she whispered, "before they silence it forever." What dark secrets could be so dangerous that someone would rather burn alive than let them stay buried? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The weight of the brass badge felt heavier than usual against James Morrison's chest as he stepped out of Engine 27. Dawn was breaking over Cedar Grove, casting long shadows across the smouldering remains of the Manning estate. His turnout gear still carried the acrid smell of smoke, a familiar companion after nearly 3 decades of service. At 54, James had seen his share of fires, but something about this one gnawed at his gut. Maybe it was the way Margaret Manning had looked at him through the smoke, her pale blue eyes sharp with urgency despite the chaos around them. Or perhaps it was the letter, now safely tucked away in his locker at the station, its edges singed, but its secrets intact. "Cap, you need to see this," called Mike Reeves, his youngest firefighter. The kid had good instincts, even if he was still green. James made his way through the debris, boots crunching on broken glass and charred wood. The morning light revealed what the darkness had hidden, patterns in the burn marks that didn't quite add up. "Start at the beginning," James instructed, pulling out his weathered notebook. 28 years of investigating fires had taught him that the truth always left its marks, if you knew where to look. Mike pointed to the living room's eastern wall, where the paint had bubbled and peeled in peculiar ways. "Fire didn't start in the kitchen like we thought. Look at these burn patterns. They're pointing toward 2 separate origin points." James ran his hand along the wall, feeling the texture of the damage. The kid was right. This wasn't some accident with a forgotten kettle or faulty wiring. Someone had wanted this house to burn, and they'd wanted it to burn quickly. Back at the station, James sat in his office, staring at the family photos on his desk. His late wife, Catherine, smiled back at him from their vacation in Maine 5 years ago, just months before the cancer took her. She'd always said he had a terrible habit of bringing his work home, of letting cases get under his skin. "You can't save everyone, Jimmy," she'd tell him, "but you'll wear yourself out trying." The phone on his desk rang, startling him from his reverie. "Morrison," he answered, his voice gravelly from smoke exposure. "James, it's Dr. Reynolds from Cedar Grove General." The hospital's chief of emergency medicine had been a friend for 20 years. "That woman you pulled out of the fire, Margaret Manning, she's asking for you, says it's urgent." James glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m. His shift had technically ended 15 minutes ago, but in a town like Cedar Grove, you were never really off duty. "Tell her I'm on my way." Cedar Grove General Hospital stood at the heart of the old town district, its red brick facade a testament to the community's history. As James walked through the sliding doors, he caught his reflection in the glass. Soot still smudged across his forehead, silver hair disheveled. He'd meant to clean up, but Margaret's message had seemed too urgent to wait. He found her in room 312, oxygen tubes in her nose but sitting upright, alert. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, and despite the ordeal she'd been through, she carried herself with the dignity of old money. The Mannings had been in Cedar Grove since before the Civil War, their name as much a part of the town as the maple trees lining Main Street. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice stronger than he'd expected, "thank you for coming. I trust you still have the letter?" James pulled up a chair beside her bed. "Safe and sound. Mrs. Manning, about the fire." She held up a hand, stopping him. "The fire was no accident, Captain, just as that letter was no accident finding its way to you." Her eyes darted to the door, checking for listeners. "What I'm about to tell you, it will change everything you think you know about Cedar Grove, about the families who built this town, about why things are the way they are." James leaned forward, his notebook forgotten in his pocket. "Sometimes the most important testimonies were the ones you had to commit to memory. The letter," Margaret continued, "was written by my grandfather, Theodore Manning, in 1923. He was meant to take it to his grave, but my father made sure I knew where to find it. 'For when the time is right,' he said." She paused, catching her breath. "Captain Morrison, do you know why Cedar Grove has never had a major crime wave? Why our property values stay high while neighboring towns struggle? Why certain families seem to prosper generation after generation?" "Good planning?" James offered, though he already suspected her answer would be far more complicated. Margaret's laugh was hollow. "Planning, yes, but nothing good about it. The Guardians made sure of that." The name sent a chill down James's spine, though he couldn't say why. Perhaps it was the way she'd said it, like speaking of something ancient and dangerous, or maybe it was the shadow he caught moving past the door's window, a shadow that paused just a moment too long to be a passing nurse. "Mrs. Manning," he said carefully. "Who are the Guardians?" But Margaret's attention had shifted to the door, her face suddenly pale. "Not here," she whispered. "Not now. Read the letter, Captain Morrison. Read it carefully. And watch your back. They'll know by now that you have it." As James left the hospital, the morning sun had fully risen over Cedar Grove, painting the town in deceptively peaceful hues of gold. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was seeing his home of 30 years through new eyes. Every familiar face on the street, every well-maintained historic building, every manicured lawn now held the possibility of secrets. The letter in his locker waited like a time bomb, ready to shatter the careful illusion of small-town tranquility. And somewhere, in the shadows, the Guardians, whoever they were watching. The letter sat on James's kitchen table, its aged envelope casting a long shadow in the afternoon light. He'd driven home the long way, taking side streets and checking his rearview mirror more times than he cared to admit. Margaret Manning's warnings echoed in his mind as he carefully broke the wax seal, a curious touch that spoke of older, more formal times. The paper inside was thick, the kind used for legal documents, though age had yellowed its edges. The handwriting was precise, almost architectural in its clarity. James recognized the style from building permits he'd seen in the town archives, all dating back to Cedar Grove's early days. "To whoever holds this letter," it began, "I write this on the eve of what our society calls the Great Silence. By morning, the truth of Cedar Grove's founding will be sealed away, replaced by the history they've chosen to tell. I can no longer bear the weight of this deception." James poured himself a cup of coffee, settling in for what he suspected would be a long read. The letter continued. "In 1872, when the official records claim our town was established as a peaceful farming community, Cedar Grove was in fact born from a far darker purpose. We were 7 families then: the Mannings, Richardses, Thompsons, Blackwoods, Hendersons, Whitfields, and Chens. Each of us carried secrets from the war between the states, fortunes built on blood and betrayal. Cedar Grove wasn't chosen for its fertile soil or timber resources. It was chosen because of what lies beneath, a network of caves and tunnels that once served as part of the Underground Railroad. But where brave souls once guided others to freedom, we perverted that noble purpose. We used those same tunnels to hide our ill-gotten gains and establish a power base that would extend far beyond our little town. We called ourselves the Guardians, for that is what we claimed to be. Guardians of prosperity, of order, of the right kind of progress. In truth, we were guardians only of our own interests. James's coffee grew cold as he read on, his policeman's instincts noting details that seemed to explain so many of Cedar Grove's peculiarities. The way certain development proposals were mysteriously withdrawn, how some families never seemed to face the economic hardships that plagued neighboring towns. The strange pattern of outsiders who tried to investigate local history suddenly losing interest or relocating. Our methods were subtle at first, the letter continued. A word here, a carefully placed investment there. But power, once tasted, breeds a terrible hunger. By 1923, we had grown bold, too bold. The disappearance of Thomas Chen, who dared to question our authority, could no longer be explained. Away as mere coincidence. His own family, bound by their oaths to the society, were forced to accept the official story of his departure for California. I write this now because blood calls to blood, and my conscience can no longer bear silent witness. The tunnels still exist, though many entrances have been sealed. The oldest lies beneath the Manning estate, hidden behind the wine cellar's false wall. But beware, the guardians remain vigilant, their influence passed down through generations. They meet on the night of each full moon in the old Masonic Hall, though they long ago ceased to be mere masons. Theodore Manning's steady hand had faltered near the end, the writing becoming more urgent. To whoever reads this, the Guardians' power lies in their secrets. Expose them to the light, and their shadow will fade. But act quickly and carefully, for they have had generations to perfect the art of silencing those who would speak against them. The letter ended with a series of numbers, written in a different hand, newer, probably added by Margaret's father. James recognized them as map coordinates, though their significance remained unclear. A floorboard creaked behind him. James spun around, heart pounding, but it was just the old house settling. Still, Margaret's warnings about watching his back didn't seem so paranoid now. He quickly photographed each page of the letter with his phone, then moved to his home office's fireproof safe. The letter had already survived one fire. He wasn't going to risk its loss to another. As he secured the document, his eyes fell on an old photo album he kept meaning to organize. Inside were pictures from his early days with the department, including one from 1995, his first major. Fire as a rookie. It showed the aftermath of the blaze that had destroyed the original Masonic Hall. The official report had blamed faulty wiring, but now James pulled out his laptop, opening the department's digital archives. The Masonic Hall. Fire hadn't been the only suspicious blaze in Cedar Grove's history. Every few decades, it seemed, key buildings burned just when questions about town history started surfacing. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Some histories are better left buried, Captain Morrison." James stared at the message, his pulse quickening. Either Margaret's paranoia was infectious, or he had already been noticed. He thought of the shadow outside her hospital room, the feeling of being watched on his drive home. The Manning estate fire suddenly appeared in a new light. Had Margaret finally decided to use her grandfather's letter, only to have the Guardians move first? Was the fire meant to destroy the evidence or send a warning? His phone buzzed again. This time it was Mike Reeves. "Cap, you need to see this. Found something weird in the Manning fire debris. Metal box, old. Has some kind of symbol on it." James texted back, "Secure it. Tell no one. I'm on my way." As he grabbed his keys, James caught his reflection in the hallway mirror. The man looking back at him seemed older somehow, as if the weight of Cedar Grove's secrets had aged him in just a few hours. His badge glinted in the fading light, a reminder of his duty to protect and serve. But now the question was, protect? And serve whom? The town he thought he knew, or the truth it had buried? The metal box sat on Mike's workbench in the station's maintenance bay, its surface streaked with soot but otherwise intact. In the fluorescent light, James could make out an intricate symbol etched into the lid. A compass rose surrounded by 7 stars, with what looked like a closed eye at its center. Found it behind a panel in the wine cellar, Mike said, his usual enthusiasm tempered by something else. Nervousness? Thing is, Cap, it wasn't the only one. There were fresh boot. Prints down there, someone else looking for something. Before James could respond, his phone vibrated. A plain white envelope had been slipped under his office door while they'd been examining the box. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper, the kind used for formal invitations. The message was typed in elegant script. Captain Morrison, your dedication to this community is appreciated. However, certain matters require discretion. The Manning Estate fire investigation is hereby concluded. Electrical fault, as per standard report enclosed. Your signature is required by end of shift. Remember, a peaceful town needs peaceful men. Council of Community Preservation. James had never heard of such a council in his nearly 3 decades of service. He showed the note to Mike, whose face went pale. My dad got something like this once, Mike said quietly, back when he was working on that development project near the old cemetery. He backed off, took early retirement, never talked about it. The station's main door chimed. Police Chief Thompson strode in, his bulk filling the doorway. He and James had worked together for 20 years, their friendship forged in the aftermath of countless emergencies. Jim, Thompson said, his voice carefully neutral. Got a minute? In his office, James noticed how Thompson kept glancing at the door, checking the hallway. The chief's normally ruddy face was ashen. You need to drop. This, Thompson said without preamble. Whatever Margaret Manning told you, whatever you think you found, let it go. He pulled out his own letter, similar to James's, but with a red wax seal already broken. They're watching. All of us. Who's watching, Bill? This council? The Guardians? Thompson flinched at the name. Don't. Just don't. You've got, 2 years till retirement? Think about that. Think about Catherine's pension. The mention of his late wife's name coming from this context sent a chill through. James, are you threatening me, Bill? Warning you, as a friend. Thompson's eyes held genuine fear. Things work a certain way here. Always have. After Thompson left, James sat staring at the 2 letters, one promising consequences, the other proving their reality. He'd never seen his old friend so rattled. His desk phone rang, making him jump. Captain Morrison, this is Sarah Chen from the Historical Society. The voice was young, professional. I'm calling about a research request you submitted regarding the 1995 Masonic Hall fire. James hadn't submitted any request. Go on. Well, I found something interesting in our archives. Something that doesn't quite match the official records. Would you be willing to meet off-site? The name Chen echoed from Theodore Manning's letter. Your family's been here a while, hasn't it? A pause. Since the beginning. Some of us remember why. Her voice dropped. The Cedar Grove Diner, 1 hour. Order the house special. I'll know you by the Manning box you'll bring. James glanced at the metal box, still sitting on Mike's workbench. How did you... 1 hour, Captain. Don't be followed. The line went dead. James spent the next 45 minutes taking an elaborate route to the diner, watching for tails. He had Mike secure. The box in a gym bag, and meet him 3 blocks away for the handoff. The young firefighter's eyes were wide with excitement and fear. This was far from standard procedure. The Cedar Grove Diner was a genuine 1950s chrome and neon establishment, its windows offering clear views of the approaches from both directions. James chose a booth with good sightlines and ordered the house special, meatloaf that had been mediocre for as long as he could remember. Sarah Chen slid into the booth 10 minutes later. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s, with an academic's sharp eyes behind vintage glasses. Without preamble, she pulled out a folder. This is going to sound crazy, she said, but my great-grandfather didn't go to California. He was murdered here in 1923, the same year Theodore Manning wrote that letter you're holding. James kept his face neutral. What makes you think I have a letter? Because Margaret Manning told me you did, right before someone tried to burn. It. We've been waiting for someone like you. Someone with authority, someone they can't easily disappear. She leaned forward. Captain Morrison, what do you know about the fire that killed my great-grandfather's real family in China? The one that made him flee to America? Or why Cedar Grove's founding families all had similar stories of convenient fires clearing their paths? The diner's bell chimed. 2 men in expensive suits entered, their bearing marking them as something other than businessmen. Sarah tensed. We need to go, she whispered. Now! James saw the glint of metal under one man's jacket. Back door. Through the kitchen. My car's in the alley. They made it 3 steps before the first shot shattered the diner's front window. The Historical Society's basement smelled of old paper and dried ink. A scholar's sanctuary, 3 hours after bullets had torn through the Cedar Grove diner. James's shoulder was still bleeding where a round had grazed him during their escape, but Sarah's first aid skills had proven as precise as her research methods. The official town charter, Sarah said, carefully unfolding a leather-bound document on the reading room table. 1872. Look at the founding signatures. Under the dim archival lights, James studied the elegant script. 7 names, the same ones from Theodore Manning's letter. But something was off about the paper itself. The watermark, Sarah pointed out. It's dated 1875, 3 years after the document was supposedly signed. A copy? A fabrication. The real charter, the one my great-grandfather discovered. She pulled out a metal tube from a hidden panel behind the card catalogue. This was hidden in our family shrine for 100 years. The true story of Cedar Grove. The document she extracted was brittle with age, but undeniably authentic. The signatures were the same, but the text above them told a very different story. Instead of the usual municipal language about incorporation and boundaries, this charter read like a contract or a confession. We, the undersigned, having acquired our positions through means best left unspoken, do hereby establish this covenant. The town of Cedar Grove shall serve as our fortress and facade, its prosperity built upon the foundations of our collective sins. Through the Society of Guardians, we shall maintain our power and protect our secrets. James read on, his coffee growing cold beside him. The true charter detailed how each founding family had acquired their wealth, the Mannings through war profiteering, the Thompsons by selling military secrets, the Chens by betraying revolutionary allies in China. Each had fled to America with blood money, seeking a place to launder both their fortunes and their reputations. The tunnels were perfect for it, Sarah explained, spreading out ancient maps across the table. The old underground railroad routes became smuggling paths, then money-laundering corridors. By the time they officially founded Cedar Grove, they'd already established a shadow economy that would sustain their descendants for generations. But why maintain it for so long? Surely, after a few generations... Power, Sarah interrupted. The kind that gets in your blood. Each generation of guardians added their own secrets to keep, their own sins to hide. Look at these property records. She pulled up recent tax documents on her laptop. Every major development in Cedar Grove for the past century. Behind each one, you'll find a guardian family making millions through insider trading, kickbacks, or worse, the pattern never stopped. A floorboard creaked overhead. Both of them froze. The society's closed tonight, Sarah whispered. Nobody should be up there. James reached for his phone, but there was no signal. Sarah's face went pale as she checked her own. They're blocking communications, she said. Standard Guardian tactic, according to my great-grandfather's journals. Before the lights went out. In the darkness, James could hear footsteps on the stairs. Multiple sets. He grabbed the true charter and maps, stuffing them into Sarah's messenger bag. Is there another way out? The old archive room, She hesitated. It connects to the tunnels. They moved silently through the stacks, Sarah leading by memory. Behind them, Flashlight beams began sweeping the basement. James caught glimpses of tactical gear. These weren't local cops or private. Security. The archive room was little more than a closet, filled with forgotten filing cabinets. Sarah pulled a specific drawer out fully, revealing a narrow passage behind it. Maintenance tunnel, she explained. Added during Prohibition, connects to the old network. She climbed through first, James following just as voices approached. "Clear them out," someone ordered. No evidence. The sound of breaking glass and spreading fire followed them into the tunnel. James thought of Margaret Manning's home, of Thomas Chen's disappearance, history repeating itself in flames. They emerged 2 blocks away, in the basement of what had once been Cedar Grove's first bank. Through a grating, they watched fire trucks, James's own department, rushing toward the Historical Society. "Everything we found," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "All those records." "Not everything." James patted her bag, heavy with the true charter and maps. "And we have something they don't know about yet." He pulled out his phone, now working again, and showed her the photos he'd taken of Theodore Manning's letter. Sarah studied them, her historian's mind clearly making connections. These coordinates in the margin, they match an old Guardian meeting place, not the Masonic hall they use now, but somewhere they abandoned, somewhere they might have left traces. "Can you decrypt them?" She nodded. "But we'll need help. There's someone else who's been collecting evidence, someone even the Guardians don't know about. My mother." James thought of the Chen family shrine where the true charter had been hidden, of generations keeping secrets within secrets. "Will she help us?" "She's been waiting 50 years to help someone." Sarah checked her watch. "But we need to hurry. The Guardians don't just burn evidence, they replace it. By morning, there will be a new official history in place, and anyone who remembers differently." They heard sirens in the distance, but not just fire trucks now. Police cars. The Guardians would be looking for them, using official channels. "Official authority. Your mother," James said. "How do we reach her?" Sarah smiled grimly. "The same way my ancestors did, through the tunnels." The ancient maps glowed faintly under Sarah's flashlight as they navigated the tunnel network. These weren't the crude sketches James had expected. They were detailed architectural drawings with notations in multiple languages and generations, of updates penciled in the margins. "My ancestors were meticulous," Sarah explained, tracing a route with her finger. "Each generation added their own marks, their own warnings. See these Chinese characters. They note which passages the Guardians still used as of 1963. The tunnels were a testament to hidden engineering, brick-lined arteries beneath Cedar Grove's respectable surface, some wide enough for small vehicles. They passed storage rooms, still holding Prohibition-era crates, rusted tools, and more recent additions, modern electrical conduits and fiber optic cables. They never stopped using them, James realized. They just updated the purpose. A distant rumble echoed through the passage. Sarah pressed against the wall, pulling James with her. "Maintenance cart," she whispered. "Guardian patrol." They held their breath as lights passed through a connecting tunnel. Once the sound faded, Sarah checked her watch. 8 minutes to the next one. They're regular. Gives us just enough time. They moved quickly through the darkness, Sarah navigating. By memory and map, the air grew mustier, the passages older. Finally they reached what looked like a dead end, until Sarah pressed specific bricks in sequence. "Family knowledge," she said, as a section of wall swung inward, passed down through the women. The men were too busy playing at power to notice. Us keeping our own secrets. The hidden room beyond was small but significant. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls, and a dusty desk held an ancient ledger. But it was the modern laptop and surveillance equipment that caught James's attention. "Mothers. Watching station," Sarah explained, booting up the computer. "She tapped into their network years ago. Everything the Guardians do down here, every meeting, every transaction, she records it all." The screen came to life, showing multiple camera feeds from throughout the tunnel system. In one, James recognized the current mayor and police chief. Thompson entering a large chamber decorated with familiar symbols, the same ones from the metal box they'd found. "Tonight's meeting," Sarah said, increasing the audio. "They're discussing us." Through the scratchy feed, they heard fragments of conversation. "Morrison knows too much. Historical society records. Chen girl involved. Time for decisive action." A new figure entered the frame, tall and aristocratic. Sarah's sharp intake of breath told James this was significant. "Richard Blackwood," she whispered. "He's supposed to be dead. Died in a boating accident 3 years ago. Mother suspected he faked it, but this is proof." Blackwood's voice carried authority. "The Manning letter and the true charter must be recovered. Morrison and the Chen girl eliminated. We've maintained order for 7 generations. I won't see it undone by some firefighter with a conscience." James felt a chill at the casual way his death was being ordered. "We need to—" The lights in their hidden room suddenly flickered. Sarah's face went pale. "Someone's accessing the power grid. They're scanning the tunnels systematically. Looking for us. Looking for any unauthorized power usage." She began rapidly copying files from the laptop. Mother set up backup systems, but the screen went black. Emergency lights kicked in, bathing the room in red. From somewhere in the tunnels, they heard boots on brick. "They'll sweep every passage," Sarah said, pocketing the backup drive. "We need to move, now." But as they slipped back into the tunnel, James caught a final glimpse of the surveillance feeds coming back online. In one, he saw Mike Reeves being led into the Guardian's chamber, hands bound. "They have my firefighter," he said. Sarah gripped his arm. "We can't help him if we're caught. Mother has a safe house. Once we reach it, he's my responsibility. And the truth about Cedar Grove is mine." Sarah's voice was firm. "Sometimes we have to choose between saving one person and saving everyone. The Guardians have maintained their power for generations because they understand that." Another rumble of maintenance carts, closer now. Sarah consulted the map one last time, then made a decision. "There's a maintenance shaft 30 yards ahead. It leads to the old water treatment plant. If we can reach it before they cut power to that section." They ran through the darkness, guided by emergency lights and generations of Chen family knowledge. Behind them, voices echoed off brick walls. Ahead lay uncertainty and the weight of 7 generations of secrets. The shaft was narrow, rusted from decades of moisture. As they began to climb, the emergency lights went out. In the perfect darkness, Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Welcome to the real Cedar Grove, Captain Morrison, the one they built in the shadows." The safe house was an unassuming ranch-style home on Cedar Grove's east side. Inside, Sarah's mother waited with hot tea and a lifetime of resistance planned for exactly this moment. But it was the small golden pin on her coffee table that caught James's attention, identical to ones he'd seen on the lapels of Cedar Grove's most prominent citizens. "A Guardian's pin," Mrs. Chen explained, her accent slight but precise. "Taken from my husband before they killed him. Each one is unique, encoded with its owner's lineage." She lifted it carefully. "This one has helped me attend their gatherings, undetected for 20 years. Before James could respond, his phone buzzed, a text from Deputy Mayor Richards. "Captain Morrison, the Oval Room at City Hall, 30 minutes. Come alone, for your firefighter's sake." Mrs. Chen studied the message, her expression grave. "Daniel Richards, 3rd-generation Guardian, but different from the others. More modern in his methods." She traced the pin's intricate design. "He prefers boardrooms to secret chambers." "It's a trap," Sarah said. "Of course it is," her mother replied. "But one you must walk into, Captain. With this." She held out the pin. "Sometimes the best way to fight shadows is to step into them." 28 minutes later, James entered City Hall through the public entrance, the Guardian pin prominent. On his lapel, the night guard, who James had known for years, simply nodded and pressed a hidden button. A panel beside the main staircase slid silently open. The Oval Room, wasn't on any official floor plan. Wood-panelled and lit by antique fixtures, it felt more like a private club than a government office. Deputy Mayor Richards stood at a wet bar, pouring 2 glasses of scotch. "Ah, the pin," Richards said by way of greeting. "I wondered what happened to David Chen's." He gestured to a leather chair. "Please sit. We're all civilized men here." James remained standing. "Where's Mike Reeves?" "Safe." Confused, wondering why his captain has dragged him into a century and a half of complicated history. Richards offered a glass. "You've caused quite a stir, James. The old guard wants you eliminated, messily. Pour encourager les autres. You understand? And you? I have a better proposal." Richards sipped his scotch. "You're a practical man, a protector. You understand that sometimes order requires compromise. Is that what you call it? What do you think keeps Cedar Grove prosperous while other towns crumble? Why our schools excel, our streets stay safe, our property values rise?" Richard's smile was practiced, politician perfect. "The Guardians aren't just some secret society. We're civic-minded citizens maintaining standards, preserving value. Through murder? Through management." Richard set his glass down. "Every town has secrets, James. Most just let them fester. We curate ours, channel them into progress." He pulled out a folder. "Your pension paperwork. Sign now, take early retirement. Full benefits plus a generous bonus. Mike goes home to his family tonight. Sarah Chen receives a grant to study abroad. Everyone lives." And Margaret Manning's letter? A sad footnote. Tragic, really. How fire. "It can destroy such old documents." James fingered the Guardian pin, feeling its weight. "And if I refuse?" Richard's smile didn't waver. "Then we do things the old way, starting with your young firefighter. The tunnels go very deep, James. Some chambers still bear scorch marks from 1923. From somewhere below came a muffled cry, Mike's voice in pain. "Civilization requires order," Richards continued smoothly. "Order requires maintenance. Join us, James. Help us maintain Cedar Grove's standards, or force us to demonstrate why those standards exist." He slid the pension papers closer. "Choose wisely. Unlike some of my colleagues, I don't enjoy messiness, but I will do what's necessary to protect our legacy." The Guardian pin felt heavier. With each passing second, its golden surface reflecting the room's subtle lighting, and with it, the shadow of someone moving behind the wood panels. The Cedar Grove Gazette's archives filled an entire wall of Sarah's laptop screen. 7 decades of suspicious deaths, unexpected relocations, and convenient accidents, all documented in the carefully worded language of a newspaper that knew which stories not to question too deeply. February 1957, Sarah read. Local historian. Edward Blake drowns while researching town records. March 1982, reporter Thomas Kane suffers fatal car accident after investigating real estate anomalies. December 1999, environmental inspector. "We get the pattern," James interrupted, his voice rough from lack of sleep. After the confrontation with Richards, they'd barely escaped City Hall through a maintenance tunnel Mrs. Chen had warned them about. Mike was still missing, but at least they'd managed to plant a tracker on one of the Guardian's vehicles during their escape. The safe house's living room had become their war room, its walls covered with printouts and photographs. Mrs. Chen moved between them like a ghost, adding notes in elegant handwriting, connecting threads that spanned generations. "They're systematic," James said, studying the pattern. "Each time someone gets close, there's an accident, but they always leave just enough doubt, like they want people to suspect, but be too afraid to act," Sarah added. She pulled up another article. "Look at this. Every editor of the Gazette, for the past century, has been a guardian or related to one. Control the narrative, control the town," Mrs. Chen said softly. "But they made one mistake. They thought burning the historical society would destroy our evidence." She opened an ancient leather briefcase. "They forgot about microfilm. The rolls of film contained every major newspaper article about Cedar Grove since 1872, including those that never made it to print. Alternate versions, unedited drafts, stories killed before publication, all preserved by generations of quiet resistors. My grandmother worked as a cleaner at the Gazette, Mrs. Chen explained. Every night she copied what they tried to hide. Every morning she smiled and emptied their trash. James's phone buzzed. Chief Thompson again, the 10th call since. Morning, this time he let it ring through to voicemail. Jim, they've filed official complaints, dereliction of duty, interfering with a criminal investigation. They're coming for your badge, your pension, everything. Call me, please. We can still fix this. As if on cue, Sarah's laptop pinged with a news alert. The Cedar Grove Gazette's website had just published a breaking story. Veteran fire captain under investigation. Sources allege mental health concerns, conspiracy theories. They're moving faster now, Mrs. Chen observed. More aggressive than I've ever seen them. You've scared them, Captain Morrison. Good, James said, but his voice caught. The article mentioned Catherine, suggesting his erratic behavior began after her death, using his grief as a weapon against him. Sarah squeezed his arm. We can fight this. The microfilm, the true charter, Margaret's letter. Won't matter if no one sees it, James cut in. They control the paper, the local TV station, the town council meetings. How do we reach people? Mrs. Chen smiled mysteriously. Perhaps it's time to show you what else we've been preparing. She pressed a hidden switch behind a bookshelf, revealing a small radio setup. During the war, my father operated a resistance radio station in Shanghai. Some skills you never forget. A pirate station, Sarah asked. Better, a network of them. Small transmitters, hidden throughout Cedar Grove, each connected to the others. One broadcast, dozens of sources. Too many for them to shut down quickly. She adjusted a dial. The frequencies are already tested. We just need the right moment, the right story. James thought of Mike still in Guardian hands, of Margaret Manning in her hospital bed, of Catherine, whose memory they dared to use against him. Not just a story, the truth, all of it. His phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level B3, midnight, proof of everything. Come alone. Sarah studied the message. Another trap? Probably. But James pulled out the Guardian pin. Sometimes you have to step into the shadows to expose them. Mrs. Chen nodded approvingly. The parking garage connects to the old tunnel network. If something goes wrong, we can extract you. But Captain... She held his gaze. Be careful. The Guardians are most dangerous when they're afraid. And right now they're terrified. Outside, a police cruiser rolled past the house for the 3rd time in an hour. In the distance, smoke still rose from the Historical Society's ruins. Somewhere, in Cedar Grove's underground maze, Mike Reeves waited for rescue, and in less than 6 hours, James would either find the proof they needed or join the long list of accidents in the Cedar Grove Gazette's archives. The Cedar Grove Community Center hadn't been this packed since the blizzard of '96. Every seat was filled for the emergency town council meeting, with people standing along the walls and spilling out into the hallway. On the giant screen behind, the council seats, the Gazette's latest headline loomed, Fire Captain's Allegations Spark Community Concern. James sat in the back, watching faces he'd known for decades carefully avoid his gaze. The Guardian pin was heavy in his pocket, a reminder of what he was fighting. Sarah and her mother had advised against attending, but he refused to hide while they destroyed his reputation. Mayor Franklin, a Guardian himself though James hadn't known it 2 days ago, called the meeting to order. We're here to address recent allegations that have disturbed our community's peace. Chief Thompson will present the facts. Thompson looked 10 years older as he approached the podium, papers trembling slightly in his hands. Following the Manning estate fire, Captain Morrison began making concerning claims, conspiracy theories about our town's founding families, accusations of criminal activities. Given his distinguished service record, we initially attributed this to stress and grief. But tell them about the tunnels, Bill. James stood, his voice carrying through the hall. Tell them what you saw down there. The room erupted in whispers. Thompson's face went pale, but Mayor Franklin quickly took control. Captain Morrison, you're not recognized to speak. Please, sit down or you'll be removed. Like Thomas Chen was removed. James stayed standing. Like Edward Blake, Thomas Kane, how many accidents does it take before people see the pattern? Security guards started moving toward him, but other voices joined in. My grandfather talked about tunnels under his store, called old Pete Martinez from his hardware shop, said they were sealed up in the 50s, no explanation. The Historical Society fire, added Linda Weber, a high school teacher. All those records just gone, and now this emergency meeting. Deputy Mayor Richards stepped smoothly to the podium. Friends, neighbors, please, these are difficult times. When respected community members suffer personal crises, it affects us all. That's why we're proposing a full review of fire department leadership, starting with the community center's lights went out. In the darkness, dozens of phones suddenly lit up with the same message. Cedar Grove Truth Bulletin #1, followed by a link. As the emergency lights came on, the giant screen behind the council seats flickered to life, hijacked to show the contents of Margaret Manning's letter. Sarah had done it, their first counterstrike. Those are private town documents, Mayor. Franklin sputtered. This is illegal. Like the real town charter? James pulled out copies of the true charter and began passing them through the crowd. The one that shows how Cedar Grove was really founded, how the Guardians built their power. Guardians? The whisper spread through the room. Some faces showed confusion, others fear, and on a few, recognition. Richards tried to regain control. These are obviously forgeries. Captain Morrison needs help, not an audience for his delusions. If we could all just then explain this. James pulled out his phone, playing the surveillance video from the tunnel meeting. Richard's own voice filled the room. Morrison and the Chen girl eliminated. I won't see it undone by some firefighter. With a conscience. The crowd's murmuring turned darker. Security guards looked uncertainly between James and the council. Mayor Franklin's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Where's Mike Reeves? James demanded. Want to explain his disappearance? Two? This meeting is adjourned, Franklin announced, but nobody moved. My cousin disappeared in '82, someone called out, right after he started asking questions about property deals. The old Masonic Hall fire. My grandmother always said the founding families had secrets. Richards leaned close to Franklin's ear, whispered something urgent. Franklin nodded and pressed a button on his phone. Suddenly, sirens blared outside, the town's emergency alert system. Due to potential civil unrest, a recorded voice announced, all citizens are advised to return to their homes immediately. Emergency curfew in effect. The crowd's anger turned to fear. Parents grabbed children. Neighbors urged each other to leave. James watched years of conditioning take hold. When authority spoke in Cedar Grove, people listened. But not everyone. A core group stayed, gathering around James, Pete Martinez, Linda Weber, others who'd had doubts for years but never dared speak them. Captain Morrison, Linda said, her voice shaking but determined. Tell us everything. Before he could answer, the doors burst open. Police in riot gear poured in, led by Thompson. This assembly is unlawful, he announced, not meeting James's eyes. Clear the building immediately. As the crowd began to disperse, James felt his phone buzz. A message from Sarah. Got everything on video. Uploading now. Mum says get out, they're sealing the tunnels. He looked at the small group still standing with him, saw the questions and fear and determination in their faces. Meet at Martinez Hardware in 1 hour, he said quietly. Bring anyone you trust. It's time Cedar Grove learned the truth about. Its guardians, Richards watched from the podium, his politician's smile finally cracking. In its place was something older and darker, the look of power, sensing its first real challenge in generations. Outside, emergency sirens continued to wail across Cedar Grove. But other sounds were rising to meet them. Voices, questions. The first cracks in 7 generations of silence. The war for Cedar Grove's soul had begun in earnest. And this time, the shadows couldn't contain it. Martinez Hardware's basement shouldn't have had a second floor, but as Pete Martinez moved an ancient shelving unit, revealing rough-hewn stone steps descending into darkness, James realized how many of Cedar Grove's buildings held secrets beneath their foundations. "Grandfather showed me this before he died," Pete explained, leading James, Sarah, and 3 others down the stairs. "Said someday someone would need it. Guess he was right." The hidden chamber was larger than James expected, clearly part of the original tunnel network, but it was the massive ledger on a central pedestal that drew everyone's attention. Bound in black leather, its pages heavy with generations of Guardian records, it hadn't been digitized like their other documents. Perhaps because some things were too dangerous to trust to computers. "The Guardian's master ledger," Sarah breathed, carefully opening it. "Mother suspected it still existed, but we never knew where." The pages told Cedar Grove's true financial history. Every transaction, every payoff, every act of corruption, meticulously recorded in different hands across 150 years. The most recent entries were in Richards's elegant script. "Look at these numbers," Linda Weber said, pointing to recent pages. "School board funds being channeled through shell companies, property deals with impossible profits, medical records being sold to research firms." They're not just protecting old money anymore, James realized. They're running a modern criminal enterprise, using the town itself as cover. Pete whistled low. "These kickbacks from the new highway project alone? Millions. No wonder my bid was rejected. Wouldn't play ball with their preferred contractors." The ledger's final pages revealed something even darker. Lists of names, potential threats to be addressed. Mike Reeves's name was there along with James's and Sarah's. But so were dozens of others, including children of Guardian families who asked too many questions. "They're eating their own," Sarah said quietly. "The old guard versus new guard conflict Richards hinted at. It's tearing them apart." A noise upstairs made everyone freeze. Footsteps in the hardware store. "Back entrance," Pete whispered, pointing to a hidden door. "Leads to—" The lights went out. In the darkness, they heard the shelving unit above being moved. Heavy boots on stone stairs, the metallic sound of weapons being readied. "Cedar Grove Police," Thompson's voice echoed. "Come out slowly." James felt Sarah press something into his hand, a thumb drive. "Mother's files," she whispered. "Everything we found in the tunnels. Don't let them—" The hidden chamber erupted in light and sound. Flashbangs, James realized too late. Through watering eyes, he saw tactical teams swarming in, Thompson leading them, his face a mask of regret. "The ledger!" Sarah tried to reach it, but an armored figure knocked her back. Richards emerged from the smoke, immaculate as ever. "Oh, let them have it," he said calmly, watching his men zip-tie the group. "It's all properly documented history now. Evidence of Captain Morrison's mental break, his conspiracy theories, his sad descent into paranoia, leading these poor people astray." He picked up the ledger almost tenderly. "Though I must thank you for finding this. Been wondering where the old guard kept their records. So inefficient, paper trails. My generation prefers cleaner methods." The town knows now," James managed, his ears still ringing. "You can't hide anymore." "Hide? Oh, James, we never hid. We just made sure people saw what they wanted to see. Order, prosperity, safety." Richard smiled. "Speaking of safety, Mr. Reeves sends his regards. He's been quite cooperative since accepting our job offer. Funny how a young father's priorities can shift when properly motivated." Sarah struggled against her restraints. "You won't get away with—" "We already have, for 7 generations." Richards checked his watch. "The emergency council meeting starts in an hour. Sadly, none of you will attend. Seems you were caught planning to bomb public buildings. All that conspiracy talk, the stress, the growing paranoia. Tragic, really, how it ended. He nodded to Thompson. Make it clean, but make sure they find enough evidence to support the narrative. Thompson raised his hand, and the tactical team began moving forward. But then something happened that made everyone freeze. From somewhere in the darkness of the tunnel entrance, a familiar sound echoed, the distinctive click of a camera shutter. Richards's smile faltered for the first time. What? More clicks, dozens of them, and suddenly the chamber was lighting up not with tactical flashlights, but with camera flashes. From every shadow, every hidden corner, phones and cameras emerged. Live streams activating. Linda Weber smiled through her zip ties. Did you really think we came alone? The cavalry had arrived, and they'd brought receipts. The police badge landed on James's desk with a dull thud. Officer Marcus Chen, Sarah's cousin, their inside man in the department, and now their last hope within the system. Looked like he hadn't slept in days. They're moving fast, Marcus said, his voice hollow. Internal affairs, FBI, state police, all compromised. The Guardians don't just run Cedar Grove, they've got people everywhere. He ran a hand through his hair. That raid last night, already being reported as a failed terrorist plot. Every newspaper within 100 miles is running the story. James stared at the badge, remembering how proud Marcus had been at his academy. Graduation, the photos, the live streams, scrubbed. Every platform got hit with copyright claims, terrorist content warnings, and national security letters. The few copies that survived are being dismissed as deep fakes. Marcus pulled out his phone, showing dozens of blocked accounts. They're better at this than we thought, more connected. Sarah burst in, her laptop clutched to her chest. We've got bigger problems. Mother's gone. The words hit James like a physical blow. Mrs. Chen had been their anchor, their strategist, the one person who truly understood what they were fighting. When? After the raid. She went to check our backup server and... Sarah's voice cracked. The safe house is burned. All our files, the historical documents, everything. Gone. Marcus checked his phone again. No reports of arrests. No bodies. Could she have gotten out? The thumb drive, James remembered suddenly. The one she gave me during the raid. Maybe... The station's lights went out. In the sudden darkness, they heard boots in the hallway. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Back. A door, James whispered, but Marcus was already shaking his head. They're everywhere. All access points covered. His hand went to his service weapon. But I can buy you time. Marcus, no. Sarah started, but her cousin cut her off. Someone has to stay behind, make it look right. He pressed his badge into James's hand. Get to the old foundry on River Street. The tunnels there run deep. Dad used to say... He swallowed hard. Just go. Please. The door burst open. Flashlights swept the room as a tactical team poured in, led by a figure James knew all too well. Mike Reeves. His former protégé wouldn't meet his eyes. Captain Morrison, Sarah Chen, you're under arrest for... Marcus moved like lightning, overturning James's desk to create cover. Run! The next moments were chaos. Gunshots, shouts, breaking glass. James and Sarah made it to the fire escape. Marcus is covering fire, keeping the tactical team back. But as they reached the alley, a shot rang out different from the others. They heard Marcus cry out, then silence. This way. Sarah pulled James toward a storm drain. Behind them, Mike was shouting orders, his voice carrying an edge of desperation that James had never heard before. They ran through Cedar Grove streets, now eerily empty under martial law. Every shop closed, every window dark. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The old foundry loomed ahead, its brick walls black with age. But before they could reach it, a familiar voice called out, "That's far enough, Jim." Chief. Thompson stepped from the shadows, his service weapon trained on them. Behind him, police cars began blocking the streets. "Bill, please," James tried. "You know what's happening. You've seen the evidence." "Evidence?" Thompson laughed bitterly. Like Marcus Chen's evidence? The surveillance footage he collected? The files he copied? He pulled out a phone, showed them a video. Marcus, 2 weeks ago, meeting with Richards, accepting an envelope, shaking hands. Sarah's breath caught. No. Your cousin's been working for us since the academy, Sarah. Everything you told him, every plan, every secret, we knew. The raid, the photos, all staged, to flush out the last pockets of resistance. James felt the weight of Marcus's badge in his pocket. The cousin's sacrifice had been real, but everything before it. Why Bill? He managed. Thompson's face softened slightly. Same reason they all join eventually, Jim. Family, protection, a piece of something bigger than ourselves. He raised his radio. Target located, all units. The street exploded. Not from a bomb, but from below. The asphalt itself bursting. Upward, as a maintenance vehicle erupted from a hidden tunnel entrance. At the wheel was Mrs. Chen, looking grimly determined. Get in, she shouted. Thompson's shot went wide as they dove into the vehicle. By the time the police recovered from the shock, they were already underground, racing through tunnels that even the Guardians had forgotten. Marcus? Mrs. Chen asked quietly. Gone, Sarah whispered. But he was one of them. No, Mrs. Chen's voice was firm. He was one of us. At the end, when it mattered, he chose right. She handed Sarah a laptop. Everything he collected, every file, every recording, he sent it to me last night. His last gift to the cause. James fingered the badge in his pocket, understanding finally what Marcus had really given them. Not just a chance to escape, but proof that even within the Guardian's perfect system, conscience could still win out. Behind them, Cedar Grove's sirens faded into the darkness of the tunnels. Ahead lay uncertainty, but also hope. Sometimes the greatest acts of resistance came wrapped in betrayal. Deep beneath Cedar Grove's east side, in a chamber that hadn't appeared on any Guardian map for 50 years, Sarah unfolded a worn piece of paper that would become their manifesto. The resistance member list had started small, just 3 names. But as Mrs. Chen worked her underground network, it grew. Each name represented someone who'd lost something to the Guardians, someone willing to fight back. Pete Martinez's hardware store employees, Linda Weber's teacher colleagues, former town council members who'd been forced out, children of Guardian families who'd rejected their inheritance of secrets, even a few police officers, sickened by what they'd been ordered to do. 27. Confirmed, Mrs. Chen reported, adding another name. All vetted, all committed, and more coming. James studied their makeshift command center, carved from an abandoned subway expansion project from the 1950s. Banks of salvaged computers lined one wall, monitoring police bands and surveillance feeds. A medical station occupied another corner where Dr. Reynolds, the hospital chief who'd first called James to Margaret Manning's bedside, now treated resistance members injured in Guardian raids. Marcus's files are proving invaluable, Sarah said, her voice catching slightly at her cousin's name. He documented everything, every bribe, every threat, every connection to state and federal authorities. The Guardians didn't just infiltrate law enforcement. They've got judges, FBI agents, even Congress, James finished. That's how they've stayed hidden so long. Every time someone got close to exposing them, the system protected itself. Mrs. Chen nodded. But systems have weaknesses, pressure points. We just need to find them. A young woman, Annie Blackwood, Richard's disowned daughter, rushed in. They're moving on the hospital. Margaret Manning. James was already heading for the tunnel entrance, but Mrs. Chen's voice stopped him. Wait, show him. Annie pulled up a video feed on the main monitor. Margaret's hospital room was empty, the bed stripped. We got her out an hour ago, Annie explained. Hidden entrance in the pharmacy basement. She's already at the safe house in Mill Valley. James felt the tension ease slightly. One step ahead for once. The letter? Here. Sarah held up a thumb drive. Everything Marcus collected. Everything we've gathered since. It's ready. We just need the right moment, the right platform. We might have that too. Pete Martinez emerged from the communications room. My contacts at the Tribune finally got back to me. They're willing to run the story, all of it. Front page, Sunday edition. The Guardians will try to stop it, Dr. Reynolds warned, like they stopped the others. Let them try. Mrs. Chen's smile was fierce. We're not playing defense anymore. The chamber's lights flickered, their warning system. Someone was accessing the upper tunnels. Multiple signals, Annie reported, checking the sensors. They're searching systematically, different pattern than before. On the monitors, they watched tactical teams moving through the tunnel network, but these weren't local police. Their gear was too advanced, their movements too professional. Federal task force. James recognized the formation. Richards is. Ain't calling in bigger guns. Good. Mrs. Chen's calm never wavered. Let them come. Every agent they send is another thread we can pull, another connection we can expose. The list of resistance members lay on the central table, each name a commitment to truth. James added his own signature, not at the top or bottom, but in the middle, one voice among many. Sunday's 4 days away, Sarah calculated. We need to hold out until then. We need to do more than hold out, James corrected. We need to show Cedar Grove what they're really fighting for. He turned to the gathered faces, saw the mix of fear and determination. The Guardians built their power on shadows and silence. So let's give this town some light, some noise. Annie's smile matched her father's for the first time, sharp, confident, but warmed by conscience he'd never shown. I know just where to start. Above them, Cedar Grove continued its uneasy peace, but in the tunnels below, revolution was taking shape. Not with bullets or bombs, but with truth, the one weapon the Guardians had never learned to defend against. The resistance was done hiding. It was time to bring the shadows into the light. The Guardian meeting schedule filled the main screen in their underground command center, its details extracted from Marcus's final intelligence dump. Every gathering for the next month was listed, but one entry stood out: full assembly, Sunday 8 p.m., original chamber. The timing wasn't a coincidence. They know we're planning something for Sunday, Sarah said, studying the schedule. This is their response, gathering everyone while the Tribune runs our story. Not just gathering, Mrs. Chen pointed out. Look at the location. The original chamber. They haven't used that space in decades. James remembered the old maps. The original chamber lay beneath Cedar Grove's first town hall, a symbolic seat of power from which the Guardians had launched their generational conspiracy. Why there? Why now? Because symbols matter. Annie Blackwood's voice carried the weight of someone raised in Guardian traditions. When the old families feel threatened, they retreat to their foundations. My father used to say, power remembers where it was born. The chamber's communications array crackled. Pete Martinez's voice came through. We've got movement topside. Police setting up checkpoints on every major road. Federal agents going door to door in the historic district. They're tightening the net, Dr. Reynolds observed, making sure no one can leave town before Sunday. On another screen, they watched live feeds from their scattered cameras. Cedar Grove had become an armed camp. Guardian tactical teams patrolled the streets while federal agents questioned residents. The official story, a terrorist threat requiring temporary martial law, spread through official channels. Your former protégé is leading the house searches, Sarah told James, pointing to one feed showing Mike Reeves coordinating a team. He looks different. James studied Mike's face on the screen. The eager young firefighter was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder. The Guardians didn't just break him, they remade him. Like they remake everyone, Annie said quietly. First with threats, then with rewards, until the person you were disappears completely. Mrs. Chen's fingers flew across her keyboard, coordinating their scattered allies. Our people are in position. Linda's teacher network has the school system covered. Pete's suppliers are ready to move the Tribune copies. Dr. Reynolds's medical staff will distribute through the hospital. And the broadcast, James asked. Sarah patted the transmitter array. Ready. The moment the Tribune hits the streets, we go live on every frequency. They can't block them all. An alert flashed on the main screen. Another message intercepted. From Guardian Communications. James read it aloud. Final purge authorized. Original chamber will serve its original purpose. The word sent a chill through the room, and his face went pale. No. What? Sarah asked. What does that mean? The chamber wasn't just their first meeting place, Annie explained. It was where they dealt with threats. Permanently. The tunnels. Beneath it, she swallowed hard. They go very deep. James remembered Richard's words about doing things the old way, about maintaining standards. The Guardians weren't just planning to weather the exposure, they were preparing to eliminate anyone who might support it. We need to warn people, Sarah started, but Mrs. Chen raised a hand. We warn them the Guardians move up their timeline. Right now they think we're running scared, hiding underground. Her eyes met James's. Sometimes the best defense is to let them think they've won, James finished. He turned to the gathered resistance members. Sunday's too late. The original chamber meeting. That's our moment. It's also a trap, Dr. Reynolds pointed out. They'll be expecting something. No, Annie corrected. They're expecting us to hide, to fight from the shadows like they do. She smiled grimly. But we're not them. James looked at the Guardian meeting schedule again. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to save not just Cedar Grove's future, but its soul. Get everyone ready, he ordered. Sunday night, we're taking this fight right to their sanctuary. Above them, Cedar Grove held its breath, caught between shadow and light. The Guardians prepared their purge, while in homes and shops and offices, people whispered about change, about truth. The final battle for Cedar Grove wouldn't be fought with guns or badges or political power. It would be fought with the one weapon the Guardians had never mastered, the courage to step into the light. The Guardians' ceremonial items gleamed under ancient gaslight. 7 silver chairs arranged in a perfect circle, each bearing the crest of a founding family. At their center stood a stone pedestal holding a massive book. Not the financial ledger they'd found earlier, but something older, the true record of Cedar Grove's dark covenant. James watched from the hidden observation gallery as Guardian members filed in. They wore modern clothes but carried ancient symbols, pins, rings and medallions marking their lineage. Richards sat in the blackwood chair, his perfect composure masking the tension James could sense beneath. Quite a sight, isn't it? Mike Reeves's voice came from behind him. All that history, all that power. James turned slowly. His former protégé held a gun, but something was off about his stance. You knew I'd come. They knew. Mike's voice cracked slightly. They know everything, Captain. Always have. His hand trembled. Did you really think you could fight them? They own this town. They own us. No one owns you, Mike. Not if you don't let them. Easy to say. You don't have a family to protect. Since Catherine... Don't. James's voice was steel. Don't you dare use her name to justify this. Below, Richards called the meeting to order. Brothers and sisters of the Guardian Society, we gather in this sacred chamber as our ancestors did, to preserve order through strength, prosperity through control. Sound familiar? Mike asked bitterly. It should. Every fire we've fought, every life we've saved, it was all to protect their order, their control. And now you're protecting them by threatening your own captain? I'm protecting my daughter's future. The Guardians can offer her opportunities, built on other people's. Pain. James took a step forward. How many daughters lost their fathers to Guardian accidents? How many families were destroyed to maintain their power? Mike's gun hand wavered. Below, Richards continued. Tonight we cleanse Cedar Grove of elements that threaten our peace. The list has been prepared. The chambers below await. They're going to kill them all, Mike whispered. Everyone who might support your story, everyone who's ever questioned, including your daughter someday, if she asks the wrong questions. James met his eyes. You know what Catherine would say about this? The gun lowered slightly. It's too late. Even if I wanted to. They're watching everything. Everyone. James smiled. Are they? The chamber's lights suddenly shifted, the gas lights dying as modern spots flared to life. Every shadow vanished as dozens of cameras revealed themselves, their red lights blinking. Live streaming, what? Richard stood, but his words were drowned out by new voices. From every entrance people poured in. Linda Weber with her teachers, Pete Martinez and his network, Dr. Reynolds leading hospital staff, police officers who'd chosen conscience over corruption. Ordinary citizens tired of living in fear, and at their head, Sarah Chen and her mother, carrying the true ledger, the original charter, and 7 generations of buried truth. You were right, Mike, James said quietly. They were watching everything. We just changed who they were. Annie Blackwood's voice rang out from somewhere. Father, the Tribune's running the story now. Every major network has picked it up. The federal agents you brought in, they just received evidence of judicial corruption going back 50 years. It's over. Richard stood rigid in his ancestral chair. You fools. You have no idea what you're destroying. The prosperity we built, the order we maintain, was built on blood, Mrs. Chen cut in. Maintained by fear, no more. The tunnels below this chamber, Sarah announced, her voice carrying to the live streams, contain evidence of Guardian justice going back to 1872. We've documented everything, every victim, every crime. Cedar Grove doesn't need shadows to prosper, James called out. It needs light, truth, the chance to build something better. Mike's gun clattered to the floor. Around the chamber, other Guardian members began removing their pins, their symbols of generational corruption. But Richard's wasn't finished. His hand moved to a hidden panel on his chair. You want to see the Guardian's justice? Let me show you. Richard. Annie's voice cut through the chaos. She stood before her father, holding out her own Guardian pin. It's finished. Let it end with us. For a moment, James saw the weight of 7 generations of secrets in Richard's eyes, the terror of facing, the light after so long in darkness. Then slowly, the Guardian leader sank back in his silver chair, not in defeat, but in something closer to relief. The revolution wasn't won with bullets or blood, but with the courage of ordinary people standing in the light. As police led Richards away, James caught Mike's eye. Catherine would be proud. He said softly. Above them, Cedar Grove's bells began to toll, not in warning but in celebration. The long night was finally ending. The digital evidence archive sprawled across dozens of screens in Cedar Grove's emergency command center, formerly the Guardian's surveillance hub. Each display showed a different facet of the society's collapse, federal agents leading away corrupt, judges, state police, arresting compromised officials, reporters swarming City Hall. But it was the ordinary citizens James watched most closely, neighbors talking openly in the streets, sharing stories long suppressed, finally free from the weight of generational silence. The Tribune's coverage has gone national, Sarah reported, monitoring news feeds. Every major network is running the story. Cedar Grove Secrets is trending worldwide. She pulled up video clips of Guardian members being arrested across the country. The network went deeper than even we knew. State capitals, federal agencies, corporate boardrooms. 7 generations of influence doesn't disappear overnight, Mrs. Chen observed. She was coordinating with federal investigators, helping them navigate the labyrinth of Guardian records. But sunshine is the best disinfectant. The command center door opened. Mike Reeves entered, looking both exhausted and somehow lighter. He'd spent the past 12 hours giving testimony, detailing everything he knew about Guardian operations. Just finished with the FBI, he reported. They're particularly interested in the financial records, how the Guardians laundered money. Through legitimate businesses, used municipal contracts for kickbacks. The town's entire economic structure was built on their system. Annie added. She'd taken charge of cataloguing her father's files, determined to expose every dark corner of her inheritance. It's going to take years to untangle it all. James studied the surveillance feeds showing Cedar Grove streets. People were emerging from their homes, gathering in parks and coffee shops. The fear that had gripped the town was giving way to something else. Anger, yes, but also hope. "What about the immediate crisis?" he asked. "Basic services, emergency response?" "We've established a civilian oversight committee," Linda Weber answered. She'd been appointed interim mayor after the mass arrests. "Pete's coordinating with county officials to maintain essential operations. Dr. Reynolds is auditing hospital records to identify Guardian interference in medical care. And the tunnels being mapped and secured," Sarah said. "Some will be preserved as historical sites, evidence of both the Underground Railroad's noble purpose and how the Guardians perverted it. Others will be sealed, their secrets documented, but their dangers contained." As alert flashed across the main screen, another Guardian cache discovered, this one beneath the old library. James watched the federal evidence team carefully extracting boxes of documents, hard drives, and what looked like ceremonial objects. "They're finding new evidence every hour," Mike said quietly. "Things even my Guardian handlers never told me about. The depth of it. How did we not see it for so long?" "We saw what they trained us to see," Annie replied. "Prosperity without questioning its source, order without examining its cost." Mrs. Chen pulled up an archive photo on one of the screens, Cedar Grove in 1872, when the Guardians first formalized their power. "They built something impressive," she acknowledged, "but they built it on blood and shadows. Now we have the chance to build something better, something that can stand in the light." The command center's radio crackled. Pete Martinez's voice came through. "You folks might want to see this. People are gathering at Town Square, hundreds of them." James switched the main display to live footage of the square. Families were emerging from their homes, bringing food, chairs, stories. Children played while adults talked, sharing memories of accidents that could finally be named as murders, of opportunities denied, of whispered warnings now spoken aloud. "It's like a town-wide wake," Sarah observed, "mourning what was lost, but also celebrating what was found," James finished. "The truth, each other, real community." His phone buzzed, a message from Thompson, now in federal custody. "You did it, Jim. You broke their perfect system. I should have helped you sooner." Another alert. Margaret Manning was being released from protective custody, eager to tell her family's story in full. The Chen family shrine was being opened as a historical site. Even the Guardian ceremonial chambers would be preserved, not as seats of power, but as reminders of how easily prosperity could become corruption when built on secrets. Mike touched one of the screens, showing his daughter playing in the square with other children. "What do we tell them about all this?" "We tell them the truth," James said, "that power corrupts in darkness but withers in light. That real strength comes from standing together, not standing above. That Cedar Grove's greatest treasure wasn't Guardian gold, but the courage of ordinary people who finally said, 'Enough.'" Outside, the town's autumn air carried the sound of conversations too long suppressed, of truth finally spoken aloud. Cedar Grove was wounded, shaken, forever changed. But it was healing, not in shadows, but in the full light of day. The town council resolution glowed on the projection screen, its formal language marking a historic shift. "Whereas the people of Cedar Grove hereby establish new governance founded on transparency, accountability, and equal justice," James watched from the back of the packed chamber as Linda Weber, now confirmed as permanent mayor, signed the document into law. 3 months had passed since the Guardian's fall. Winter had come to Cedar Grove, but the cold couldn't dampen the spirit of renewal that filled the town. The resolution wasn't just a piece of legislation. It was a blueprint for rebuilding, crafted with input from every neighborhood, every community group that had emerged from the shadows. Article 1, Linda read aloud, establishes the truth and Reconciliation Committee empowered to investigate past Guardian actions and provide compensation to victims' families. Sarah Chen, appointed to lead the committee, stood to explain. We've already identified over 200 cases of Guardian interference. Jobs denied, businesses undermined, lives destroyed. Each will be reviewed, the truth documented, and, where possible, restitution made. Article 2, Linda continued, creates the Municipal Transparency Office. Pete Martinez, looking uncomfortable in a suit but proud, outlined his new role. Every contract, every development deal, every penny of public money will be publicly tracked. The days of backroom deals are over. James studied the faces in the chamber. Former Guardian families sat alongside those they'd once controlled, all part of the healing process. Mike Reeves was there with his daughter, his testimony against. The Guardians, matched by his work, helping rebuild the fire department's integrity. Article 3, Linda read, establishes the Historical Preservation Commission. Mrs. Chen rose slowly, her dignity undimmed by age or struggle. The tunnels will tell both stories now, the Underground Railroad's courage and the Guardians' corruption. Future generations must understand both the nobility we're capable of and the darkness we must guard against. The resolution continued, each article addressing another aspect of reform. New ethical guidelines for police and emergency services, independent oversight of municipal contracts, protection for whistleblowers, regular town halls where any citizen could speak freely. But it was Article 7 that caught James's attention. All emergency response personnel are hereby charged with protection of not just life and property, but truth and justice. Mike leaned over, whispering, that part was for you, Cap, for showing us that sometimes protecting people means fighting the system that claims to protect them. James thought of Catherine, of how proud she'd be seeing her town emerge from generations of shadow. His hand touched the Guardian pin he still carried, not as a symbol of power now, but as a reminder of the price of silence. Annie Blackwood, who'd refused her father's legacy to help expose it, presented the final article. No family, no organization, no power structure shall hold authority above the common good and equal justice under law. As Linda prepared to sign, Sarah's laptop pinged. The Tribune's website had updated. Cedar Grove model spreads. 10 more towns expose Guardian influence. It's not just us anymore, Sarah whispered. Other communities are finding their own hidden networks, their own versions of the Guardians. Our story gave them courage. The resolution was signed to thunderous applause. Outside, Cedar Grove's winter sunshine sparkled on fresh snow, on streets where neighbors now met openly, on buildings being repurposed from Guardian strongholds to community centers. There's still so much to do, Mike said as they left the chamber. So many threads to unravel, so much trust to rebuild, but we're doing it together, James replied. In the open, that's what matters. They passed the old Masonic Hall, its windows now clear, its secrets exposed to light. A sign announced its new purpose, Cedar Grove History Museum, both stories told here. Inside, school children on a field trip learned about the Underground Railroad's heroes and the Guardian's betrayal of that noble legacy. They asked questions that would have been dangerous just months ago. Their teachers answered with truth that had too long been buried. Cedar Grove was changing, but its soul, the real one, not the facade the Guardians had maintained, was finally emerging. In coffee shops and community centers, in renovated tunnels and restored buildings, people were building something the Guardians never could. Genuine community, founded on truth instead of power. The winter wind carried the sound of hammers and saws, of reconstruction and renewal. Cedar Grove would never forget its dark history, but neither would it be defined by it. The shadows had served their purpose, teaching the value of light. The memorial plaque caught the late summer sunset, its bronze surface reflecting the names of those who'd fought the Guardians across generations. It stood in the renovated town square, surrounded by benches where people now gathered freely, without fear of watching eyes or whispered threats. James traced the newest addition, Marcus Chen. He chose truth over power. The date of his sacrifice marked exactly 1 year since the Guardians' fall. Other names stretched back through decades: Thomas Chen, Edward Blake, Thomas Kane, all those who died trying to expose the truth. "It's a powerful reminder," Sarah said, joining him at the memorial. She'd just finished giving a tour to another group of journalists and historians, drawn by Cedar Grove's example of successful reform. Though Mother insists we shouldn't just remember the martyrs, but also the quiet resistors. The ones who kept hope alive in small ways. The town had changed in ways both visible and subtle. The old Guardian mansions had been converted into community centers and museums. The tunnel network, carefully mapped and secured, now hosted educational tours about both the Underground Railroad and the corruption that followed. Even the original chamber had been preserved, not as a place of power, but as a warning about power's ability to corrupt. "How's the book coming?" James asked. Sarah had spent the year documenting Cedar Grove's transformation, weaving together historical records with contemporary accounts. "Final chapter," she smiled. "Though deciding how to end it isn't easy. Do I focus on the reforms, the prosecutions, the way other towns are following our example? Tell them about tonight," James suggested. They walked together toward the old Masonic Hall, now the Cedar Grove Community Center. Inside, an unusual gathering was taking place, former Guardian family members meeting with descendants of those their ancestors had wronged. It wasn't the first such meeting, but it was perhaps the most significant. Mike Reeves was there with his daughter, sitting beside the family of a man who'd disappeared in 1992 for questioning Guardian contracts. Annie Blackwood shared coffee with people her father had once ordered monitored. Even some of the older Guardian members who'd accepted plea deals were present, offering information to help locate missing records and stolen assets. "It's not perfect," Sarah observed. "Some wounds are too deep to fully heal. But at least we're facing them honestly now." Linda Weber, her year as mayor marked by steady reform, took the podium. 1 year ago, Cedar Grove chose light over darkness, truth over power, community over control. She gestured to the walls, where photographs told the town's dual history, both the proud moments and the painful ones. "We're not here to forget the past, but to ensure its darkest chapters never repeat." James watched Mike hug the daughter of the man his former Guardian handlers had eliminated, saw Annie Blackwood share tears with those her father had oppressed, witnessed the slow, difficult but vital work of genuine reconciliation. His phone buzzed. A text from Thompson, now serving time, but also helping federal investigators unravel Guardian networks in other towns. "You were right, Jim. The truth really does set you free." Outside, Cedar Grove's evening settled softly over streets where neighbors now met without fear, where businesses thrived on merit rather than connection, where children played in parks, once watched by Guardian cameras. The town's prosperity hadn't collapsed as Richards had warned. It had deepened, strengthened by genuine community rather than coerced control. Sarah touched the memorial plaque one last time before heading in to document the reconciliation meeting. "Maybe that's how my book should end," she mused. "Not with the fall of the Guardians, but with the rise of something better, something true." James stayed a moment longer, watching the sunset paint Cedar Grove in honest light. Catherine would have loved this version of their town, not perfect but real, not controlled but free. The memorial's bronze surface reflected his smile as he turned to join the others. Some treasures, he'd learned, could only be protected by sharing them. Some truths only survived by being spoken aloud. The new fire station's dedication plaque shone in the morning light, its simple inscription capturing Cedar Grove's transformation. In service of truth and safety, Margaret Manning, now 94 but still sharp as ever, sat in the front row as James cut the ribbon. Around them, the crowd included faces that would have been unthinkable together just a year ago. Former Guardian families alongside those they'd once oppressed, all united in building something new. "A letter brought us here," Margaret reminded James afterward, her eyes twinkling. One brave man's truth, preserved through generations, waiting for the right moment and the right person to bring it into the light. James thought of that night, of smoke and secrets and a choice that had changed everything. The town had faced its shadows and emerged stronger, not perfect but honest, not controlled but free. "Some fires," he told the gathered crowd, "illuminate more than they destroy."